Thank you. So the next speaker is Jonathan Ish-Horowicz. Is David's nephew, and he's going to share with us also, his journey with David and how David influenced his career. Thank you, Jonathan.
So I'm Jonathan, David's nephew, and I did my PhD in computational biology and biostatistics. So you can imagine that David was a very useful person to have as an uncle. But I'm going to start with actually nothing to do with science. This is my diary entry from when I was 8 years old, and it's another reference to his football career. And it's my Aunt Ruth's birthday party, so I'll just read it out. When the party started, I played football. Whilst I was playing with Uncle David, I said that he was the liveliest adult I'd ever met, because he was jumping around like a frog, and I'd never seen an adult do that. One time he jumped into the climbing frame. So, yeah, I think maybe people would recognize the enthusiasm that's been already mentioned a few times. So that enthusiasm really was sort of a feature of David's support for me through my scientific career. So here is my scientific career. It obviously started, like many of David's nieces and nephews, at Lincolnton Fields, aged 14 with Sheila's help, who's here today. But I actually at that time wasn't so interested in biology, even though I did love being in the lab. I was actually kind of always more interested in physics and maths. So that's what I did. I did my master. After I'd done my master's in maths, I think David was very happy when I decided to do a PhD, and he was even happier when I said I'd actually got a research assistant post at the biostatistics unit in Cambridge. And I was thinking about, seeing how that went to do my PhD in something interdisciplinary, biological related. And so from then you can imagine there was a lot of suggestions, a lot of networking, meeting people, and a lot of reviewing and reading. Really, as everyone has said, very generous with his time, reviewing applications, reviewing cover letters, reviewing journal articles. So I did in the end do my PhD in systems biology and bioinformatics, and then I went on to do a postdoc at the Heart and Lung Institute. And it was also around that time from Cambridge where we started to go for quite regular coffees, where mostly we would discuss a lot of skiing holidays, but we would also talk about science. And so they're going to talk about just probably, not coincidentally, the two best pieces of work I was involved with, where I just directly followed David's advice. So the first one is really, when I was choosing the PhD, he kept saying, you should try and be in the lab as much as possible. You've got to be in the lab. Don't be separate to the lab. If you're going to work in biology, you need to be there, even if you're not doing the experiment. So I did end up in Bill Cookson and Miriam Moffat's lab at Imperial at the National Heart and Lung Institute. They work on characterizing the lung microbiome, so of patients with chronic lung diseases. So this is 16S RNA sequencing, and the paper that we worked on was, so you have the 16S RNA sequence, and that's good for quantifying and identifying the bacteria that live in the lung, but it's a very short sequence and there's a lot of other things. So the work that had been done before I arrived was to isolate a lot of those bacteria that had come from the sequence and then grow them in culture and then grow the whole sequence, and then do the whole sequencing. So, and try and make some sort of characterize functionally what was happening there. And so that's basically what this paper was about. The second piece of advice David gave me, well, not so much advice, he was always asking was, what experiment are you going to do to validate your results? Have you thought about the next experiment? Which I obviously, as a computational person, hadn't really thought about the first experiment. So that was interesting. But it, again, once I did finally start to do that, did have quite a big effect on the work that we did. So this was a piece of work where we taking the cystic fibrosis disease registry and the microbial sort of, the samples that are taken from patients when they come into the hospital. The hypothesis of, this is with Jane Davis's group, also at Brompton Hospital. Their hypothesis was that if you have a chronic co-infection of Pseudomonas and Staphylococcus, that strains that can exist together are less virulent. And so you'll be able to see that in the clinical outcomes. So this is analysis of the clinical outcomes, the lung function on the left, FEV1, and the number of days on intravenous antibiotics. And we did see this this mitigating effect of people who have chronic co-infection. And now the paper, the work's going on to do the biological analysis of what may be driving that in the underlying bacteria. So this is something slightly different. This is the Ish holiday, which happened 2 years ago. And there's a lot of Ish-Horowitzes there. And one thing about being called Ish-Horowicz is that it's a very distinctive name. So people really remember it. And people did often, either when they saw my name, they really would say, oh, like David's paper on this really changed the way I thought about something I didn't understand. Or, he really mentored me in a way, as we've heard today a lot, he really mentored me in a way that was so generous, or people really had a lot of very positive things to say. And a lot of the time, separately to that, is a distinctive name. I often got invited to different things when people thought I was him. And usually I would say, sure, yeah, but I'm not him. And then I would never hear from them again. But yeah, I just wanted to end with, because he was so humble, obviously, we in the family didn't always know that he was so highly thought of, because he was so eager to raise other people up ahead of himself. So thank you, Ros, for giving us all the opportunity to hear today about how highly thought of he was.
Thank you, Jonathan. Questions? I think we could give a good round of applause to these three last speakers.